Great to be with you for Wednesday's edition of Footy Talk. Of course, it's done a little differently on a Wednesday. We take a look at the world of footy, this crazy world that we're involved in from the players' point of view. We give you an insight into what it's like to be behind the headlines and everything happening. I'm Jack Heverin. Little spring in my step, as always, on a Wednesday morning when I see Abby Holmes. Abs, morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It is wonderful to be here. I avoided the puffer jacket for as long as I possibly could, but it is back. It's bloody chilly now in Melbourne, but excited to get stuck into the potty today, and we've got some great matches to come.
We do. A lot to talk about. We'll get to our thought of the week very shortly. But what about you? I mean, you are just, I say this every week on this show, that you are just on the path of world domination.
Oh.
You are killing it. There's a little write-up in the Herald Sun this week about, some of the best media performers of the year so far. And Kate McCarthy, our girl, got a
Yes.
mention. And Daisy Thomas, who's airborne at the moment, got a mention. And you as well for your hosting duties this year. So clap, clap.
Thank you. Thank you. Our publicist at 7M did screenshot that and send it through to me, which is nice to be, I guess, recognised in that space amongst, as you just mentioned, some great names within the industry. So what are we, round 9 this week, over a third of the way through. And, that was very nice.
Lot to get through. But we always start this show with our thought of the week. Where do you want to go to start with today?
I've got a few. You and I just came in here going, right, well, we've got to really hone in on this.
Might be more than one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts of the week was around Brodie Grundy. His inclusion into this Swan side, sitting pretty on top of the ladder now. What they did on the weekend, a 29-point victory against the GWS Giants. But the role that Brodie Grundy's playing in this side is sensational. And this is what we speak about. I swear we were talking about Grundy every week on the podcast last year, not getting a game, playing in the twos, not playing as a ruck, playing as a forward, out of position, not living up to expectation. But put him in the right system, right? Put him in the right system at the Swans where his game can flourish.
Mm-hmm.
He had 19 disposals on the weekend, 11 tackles in the wet, we know, 16 contested possessions, 5 intercept and 4 clearances. That's not even mentioning his hit-outs, which were through the roof as well. But
on a day that wasn't great for big men.
Exactly right. And I just said this as well. On a wet day, like, you forgive the tools for having shockers, don't you?
Yep.
Whereas he flourished. And I just think my thought of the week is how sensational it is to see Brodie Grundy, who's a great footballer but also a great person, get the opportunity that he deserves when, once again, at the D's last year, their game style didn't suit having the double ruck situation and they couldn't fit him in under Max Gawn, who's all-Australian form again this year. So I'm just really happy for him that he's gone up to the Swans. He's a Bondi man now, suits him. His lifestyle up there in New South Wales, you can just get the sense that he is flourishing as a person and as a player, and that's wonderful to see.
So if the All-Australian squad was picked now for the first 8 rounds of the season, would you have him in it? Would it be him and Max Gawn as the two rucks?
Yeah, Max Gawn is in career best form, arguably. Looking at his 7th All-Australian, which is quite remarkable.
He could just about finish his season now and probably still make the All-Australian team as the ruckman.
He's a freak, Gawny. But it is exciting to say that Brodie Grundy would have to be in that conversation. You've got some quality rucks floating around. Riley O'Brien's having a ripping season. Tristan Cherry, we mentioned before, Marshall too. So there are so many great rucks across the competition. But from where we were last year, talking about Brodie Grundy in the sense that, things weren't looking good, to him 12 months later being in a team that genuinely needs him and he is up and about and performing for them week in, week out. I'm really proud of him, actually.
Yep, I love that one.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. He's a good person.
Totally.
He found himself in a situation last year that he thought was going to be a lot better than what it was, and I think they all just agree that they probably got that one wrong, but now he's getting the result, which is fantastic. It shoehorns into my thought of the week.
Yes.
Which changed late, by the way. This is
It
a
did,
very,
very
very
late.
late change. Apologies to Hawthorn. I had you as my thought of the week, and well done. Your win was very, very
We'll
good.
chat about Hawks later.
We'll get to them shortly. The Brodie Grundy scenario is my thought of the week because we're seeing it now with Rory Lobb.
Yep.
Why can't we just do a trade? If we can get the two teams and the player involved to agree, why can't we just do a deal now for Rory Lobb? So there's no spot for Rory Lobb in the Bulldogs forward line.
No.
Unless they have 1 or maybe even 2 injuries. They might decide if say Aaron Norton got injured this round, they might decide that they've still got enough and that they don't play Rory Lobb. There's no certainty. But then you've got a team like Collingwood who desperately need a forward, and there are others. Rory Lobb's going to waste a year basically doing nothing in the VFL, much like Brodie Grundy wasted a year last year in the VFL and playing games here or there. If both parties and the player can agree, why can't we just do a deal anytime up until, say, round 13 or 14? Why can't you just get in a room, thrash it out, and make the move as long as everyone agrees?
It's a really good point. And I've been one that's been totally for a mid-season trade period. But as you're suggesting, it could potentially happen at any given time.
Whenever, yeah.
Over the first 3 or 4 months of the season. And Rory Lobb is the perfect case study here. There is no room for him in the in the Western Bulldogs team. So you've got Norton, Ugle-Hagan, Darcy English, and as you said, if they do have an injury, it is still not a given that he's going to come into this side. So, and I guess I've kind of experienced it as well with Keegan. Like, he was always a backup ruck at a club that ultimately had really good ruck stocks. Like, you look at him when he was at West Coast, you had Nick Nat, you had Hickey, you had Vardy, then you had Keegan. And if that opportunity was available to him at that point in time to potentially go to another club like St Kilda back in this is kind of 2018, 2019, where they were screaming out for a ruckman, then he might have...
Would he have gone, do you think?
Keegan was desperate for opportunity. Yeah, and whilst he could flourish in the waffle and the VFL and the Sandful levels, he was just crying out for an opportunity at AFL level. So Rory Lobb, going back to him, absolutely, I'm all for it. But in saying that, the club and, more importantly, the player have to be on board.
Yeah, and
so if they do not want to go, if they want to try and pull themselves out of this hole and lift their form and work their way back into a starting 22-23 with a sub contention, then absolutely you have the right. You are contracted to stay at that football club. But if you do want to go to a club that you know that you'll be playing and, getting opportunity, then 100% I think it should happen.
Yeah, and that's important as well. I just want to clarify that as well. We don't want transactions where we see it in American sports where a player can be in the middle of a game and find out that he's been traded. Nothing like that. And I'll just stop those who are saying that I'm trying to Americanise AFL. I'm not.
No.
All I'm saying is that players want movement, AFL want movement, teams want freedom of movement. Why wait?
Yep.
Let's just do it.
I think that is a brilliant thought of the week.
I'm glad I can finally get one right. Tom Hawkins, big milestone coming up this week. Now, there's been a bit of discussion for him about the way he's playing at the moment. He hasn't kicked a goal for a month, but if you talk to those at Geelong, it's about more than just kicking goals for Tom Hawkins and what he's doing. Let's put that to a side for a second here and just celebrate the milestone. He's going to equal Joel Selwood for the most games played at Geelong. It is an incredible achievement for a guy, Abs, who early in his career, there were a lot of people doubting that he would play 100 games, let alone 355.
Massive. Congratulations, Tommy, from all of us here first and foremost. And you listen to him speak and it doesn't sit well with him because this is a man who grew up supporting the Cats, right? So you've gone through many different decades and eras of full forwards that have come out and dominated for the Cats. His great mate, Joel Selwood, does it, 355 games. And for him to equal that of Joel this week and then next week, or if he has a week off, maybe the weekend after.
Well, we'll get to that, yeah.
It is such an incredible achievement for him and his family. So, it is really, really exciting. As he said, it doesn't sit well with him knowing the legends that have gone through that football club, but it is so well deserved. And I don't know, for somebody of his size as well to have the longevity like in his body, it is very impressive. He obviously is very diligent in his prehab, his rehab, his training just to ensure that he gets up on the park each and every week. So congratulations to him. And for people really focusing on the 4 weeks and not kicking goals, I just want to touch on that quickly because he is playing such a crucial role to that side. He doesn't need to kick goals.
He played as a decoy 2 weeks ago against Carlton.
It is a different role.
His job was to take Jacob Wiedering as far away from the play. That's unselfish.
Totally. And we touched on this on Monday as well, but this year, he's not playing as a out of the goal square, lead up, forward, kick goals. He's playing higher up the ground, keeping defenders busy. Ollie Henry is the number one target inside 50, who is a little whippersnipper, But, Yeah, I just think that he's playing a really unselfish role for this team, and congratulations. It is a big moment for him on the weekend, and I can't wait to see that unfold on Friday night.
Yeah, I can't wait for it as well. And he's such a good person. He's going to be universally celebrated for the sort of person he is as well, which is great. But let me just throw this one at you, Abs.
Okay.
Next week, they travel to Darwin and they play the Suns. Would you rest Tom Hawkins next week? And the following week, round 11 against the Giants. So that'll be 1 or 2 versus 4 or 2 versus whatever it may be on the ladder. But would you give him a home game to break the record?
I think I would. And that's me being a die-hard football tragic and really caring about the Cat supporters down at GMHBA. Look, do they need him up in Darwin? Probably not. It's going to be a different game. It's very sticky, very humid. Yeah, I don't know. I probably would next week. And Chris Scott has said as well that they've planned this out.
Yeah.
He's not going to play every week because they do have to manage these senior guys through the year to ensure that they're there at the pointy end. And at this point in time, the Cats are absolutely going to be there at the pointy end.
And your point's a good one because I reckon if they had have mapped this out at the start of the year,
Darwin's won.
No disrespect to the Suns,
Yep.
and you are allowed to rest players without being disrespectful. I think that's really important.
Yep.
I reckon the Darwin trip would have been one that they would have circled and said, regardless of where we're playing and how you're going, you're not going to Darwin.
Because it's not an Adelaide trip, where it's kind of 50 minutes to an hour on a plane and you're there and you're straight in. Darwin it's a big couple of days. It's a 4-hour flight up there, and then it's your captain's run in 32 degrees, and it's the game itself is completely different to one that they would play down south. So that is probably one that if you're looking at the fixture earlier in the season, you put a circle around that as one to rest Tom Hawkins.
Let me throw a yay or nay at you here, Abs.
Okay.
The send-off rule. Yay or nay?
Nay.
Why?
Actually, can I change that? Maybe yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Look, I think the action itself needs to be warranted for a send-off, and that's something that is very malicious and something that is completely out of character to what we want to see in the game.
Andrew Gaff on Brayshaw
yes,
as an example.
100%. That is the perfect example for a send-off rule. But it has to be an extreme case. I don't think the bump on the weekend, who was at the GWS? Callum Brown. Yeah, I don't think that's warranted for a send-off rule because that is still a player that's effectively, going for the footy and unfortunately has clipped someone on the way through. Yeah, so I don't think that a send-off rule in those instances, in the real kind of footy, arguable instances, is okay.
See, the Brown one's a good example, and this is why it's come up from the weekend. Yeah. It's why I wanted to ask you, because there are some that have said that should have been an automatic send-off. But then there are others trying to argue that it should have been 1 week instead of 2 or 3. So it's a big price to pay.
But this is where, as well, there's so much confusion around it. And it's not, obviously, we within the media, speak about it often and whatnot. But from the players, from the coaches, from the tribunal, from the AFL to the clubs to everybody, I think that everyone's a little bit confused at the moment, which is a really tricky position to be in. And yeah, it's just something that the AFL is going to have to work through over the next month or so because it has been a very inconsistent start to the year. But yeah, I certainly don't think that we need a send-off rule in those instances.
I'm happy to leave that one out, to be honest. I still maintain that I have all this respect in the world for our umpires because I still maintain that this is the hardest game in the world to umpire,
100%.
Australian rules football, and it's getting harder and harder every year.
Yeah.
Can't add that in as well. We didn't talk about the Hawks off the top because we changed our mind very late on our thought of the week, but we were both there on Sunday. We saw them have a really, really good win over the Western Bulldogs. And because of the state of the Dogs and where things sit with them right now, we both kind of feel as though the Hawthorn win has been lost a little bit because the Bulldogs are the story to come out of the game. But their second win of the season, 15 minutes in, it looked like they were going to lose by 15 goals. It was such a poor start for the Hawks, but they found a way into the game and they found a way to stay in the game, which is just as important.
The Hawks are all right, aren't they?
They'll be okay.
The kids are all right.
Yep.
And I wanted to, straight off the top here, talk about their forward line. Cal Shadir, we were lucky enough to be there on the weekend, and that was such a special moment. His dad, of course, the Norm Smith medalist from 91, a legend of that football club. But he is going to be a great player.
Yeah.
Even standing next to him in the rooms post-game, he's a good size. He's still got to put on a lot of muscle. There's no doubt about that. But I asked Keegan on the way into the game, I said, what can you tell me about Kausha? And he was like, he just always looks like he's going to do something. Like he's going to compete. He's going to crack in. He's going to contest and just his aerial ability as well, which we're going to see over the next, however many years. It's going to be really exciting. But put him next to Mitch Lewis when he's back in, 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's close. Yeah.
Spoke to him in the rooms as well. He's tracking well. Marby Achol, when he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. There's not, I guess the consistency piece is something that we do need to see from him. But when he's up and about, he's a quality player. Ginnivan, you know what he's going to give you week in, week out. He is just a solid contributor. Gunston, Bruce, some of the most experienced heads in the game in your forward line. Moore as well, zipping around.
Yeah.
This forward line is something that when it clicks, it's going to click and it's going to click very, very well. And I think Hawks fans should be very impressed with what they're going to see in the years to come. But how about Jarman Impey as well on the weekend?
He was
That's
fantastic.
arguably one of the best games that he has played in recent years.
You can see why they're chasing a Bailey Smith type, can't you?
Yeah.
Because if you added Bailey Smith at his peak into that midfield,
Yeah.
things would change pretty quickly. I think.
Definitely, and that's the thing. They're building a really solid list profile down there, but they are just missing a few little pieces to the puzzle, which no doubt, obviously, their list management team and coaches certainly have their eyes on certain players. But, McGuinness,
Yep.
I guess the improvement we've seen for the last 12 months, I should say, John Newcomb, there's some really, really solid players in there. And I guess the versatility as well that we saw with their captain, James Sicily as well.
I like him as a forward.
Yes. Yeah, well, he, as Sam Mitchell said, he'll claim it. He kicked the winning goal. But yeah, the versatility of that, having him as a solid defender, but then being able to switch him and Hardwick late to change the state of the game, that was a huge move and player driven as well. Sam said he brought them together and said, what do you want to do? And they ultimately decided to switch. So I'm really excited for the Hawks and for Sam Mitchell because they're certainly building something special.
Just got to bridge the gap between their best and their worst.
They do. Consistency.
If they can swim more in the middle as opposed to high end, low end, things will get better for them pretty quickly.
And just the four-quarter effort, we saw that on the weekend. Whereas what we've seen over the past few weeks is just severe lapses in concentration, and good teams will absolutely punish you.
Before the break, Brisbane Lions,
Yeah.
hard not to talk about them now. And when you look at sort of what's coming up and what they don't have access to player-wise and more ACLs, I think we can absolutely take top 4 off the table now. Do we need to start to seriously think about taking top 8 off the table?
Shattered for them, McCarthy and Gardner, in the space of only, a few minutes really, with their ACLs. That has been confirmed. So for me, top 4, with those two missing, 2 senior kind of experienced players, it's going to be really, really hard, obviously, to mix it with that top 4. But I think we are slightly concerned now about even the 8. Things haven't clicked for them early in the season, but a big test for them this week is Adelaide.
That's a tough fixture.
It is.
Crows have won 2 in a row, full
They're
of confidence.
up and about. They've got their DNA back, the Crows. They're attacking well. So this, for me, is a season-defining game for the Brisbane Lions. If they can get up and roll Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, then we might be talking about them differently next week.
What if they don't?
Then it's going to be very hard for them to play finals football.
I think that's the general view. If they lose this weekend, it's going to get pretty tough from here on in. Ethan Meldrum in the studio next. He's got all of the numbers that matter from the weekend. He always brings plenty of good stuff to the table, and he will join us next. His hair's looking nice today as well. This is Footy Talk. Of course, if you want to get involved, you can send us a message on Instagram at footytalk_pod. Nice to be with you for Wednesday's edition of Footy Talk. Abby Holmes and Jack Heverin, of course. If you are listening on Spotify, then hit the bell. You'll be notified of when we drop new episodes, which are landing each and every single day. Before we welcome in our next guest, Abs, little shout out to our man David Zaharakis, who completed another Ironman on the weekend, a little under 10 hours. Incredible effort from our boy.
He's very happy about it too, the lad. I think it was 9 hours, 47 minutes, which is unbelievable. A personal best of over half an hour from his first one at Busselton. So congratulations to him. I'm sure he'll let us know about that when he's back in the studio.
Just for all of our listeners, just take a moment to think about that.
Oh,
He chose to exercise for 9 hours and 47
I
minutes.
cannot think of anything worse.
uninterrupted. It's nuts.
I cannot think of anything worse, to be honest, but
No.
credit to him.
Ethan Meldrum, all of the Red Z lenders, of course, across the weekend on Triple M footy. Are you sort of got any Ironman aspirations in your near future, Eth?
No, if I've got 9 hours and 47 minutes of my life, I'm not spending it exercising, I don't think. Much rather spend it with you two, though.
Oh, it's nice to have you. Hey, we were just talking about the Hawks before the break.
Yeah, I was looking at the best teams at defending ball movement. So defensive 50 to forward 50 ball movements, a really important stat in the competition. So the top few teams last year, Sydney made finals, St Kilda made finals, Melbourne made finals, Collingwood made finals, Carlton made finals. They were the top 5 teams at defending or not conceding goals, straight from their defensive 50 last year. The top handful of teams this year all correlate with the top 8 for the most part. So Essendon, Geelong, Western Bulldogs are there. I think they're going okay. Lost to Hawthorn the weekend. Fremantle, Melbourne, Sydney, GWS.
Mm-hmm.
Adelaide is second. Top place on that list, the team that has conceded the least goals going from D50 to forward 50 is Hawthorn at the moment.
Wow.
There you go.
Hawthorn, who were they were the worst team in the competition in that stat last year. They conceded the most goals per game, more than North Melbourne, more than West Coast, more than Port Adelaide, who had a lot of issues in that department, lost 2 finals in a row because of it. Hawthorn were the worst team in the competition. Now they're the best. They did it to the Dogs on the weekend. I think it was like 31 rebound 50s to 4 inside 50s. Normally teams go 1 in 4 end to end. The Dogs only did it 4 out of 31 and didn't kick a goal from that stat. Hawthorn have really flipped things around in this regard. They're defending the ground a lot better. Their back 6-7 is working a lot better. Impey's lifted, as you said. Scrimshaw's lifted. Sicily is dominant as ever. They're really stringing things along the Hawks.
Especially against the Western Bulldogs, and that's their game, isn't it? That run and carry, the run and dash off half back, and their ability to transition from D50 to forward 50. So Sammy Mitchell will be very happy with that. You cannot fault the effort of his side, and from what we saw on Sunday, Hev, I've touched on it, but it's very exciting.
It's good because last year, to Eat's point, you could score against Hawthorn freely if you really wanted to. The best teams were able to just kick it straight over their head. Adelaide Crows.
Yeah.
Bit of love in the air all of a sudden for the Crom.
Yeah.
Hit me with it.
Yeah,
we love Crows.
Go the Crom. So they obviously started the year poorly, lost to Geelong. They had that really horrific loss to Fremantle over in Perth. Remember, they only scored, 4 goals, 10 or whatever it was. Really dour game, that one. It was very hard to watch. I don't know why I had it on the TV. Ever since then, they've lifted significantly in all departments, so much so that they're 3 and 5 at the moment, beat Brisbane on the weekend. They've actually got a pretty favourable run. They could be in the top 8 in 4 or 5 weeks' time.
10 of their last 16 games as well are played at Adelaide Oval.
There you go. And that's post-gather round as well. So in the last 5 weeks, their pressure's lifted to 4th in the competition. Their disposal efficiency is lifted to 1st. Their kick-to-handball ratio has gone from 4th to 12th. They're sharing it around a lot more. Looking at the first 3 rounds, they had 134 intercepts in the midfield between the arcs, which ranks about mid-table in the competition. It only led to 3 goals, which was worse than the comp by a mile. Since then, they've had 172 midfield intercepts for 24 goals. They kicked 3 or more goals in every single game. So not only are they creating a lot more pressure, winning the ball at ground level, but they're actually starting to punish teams for it. They were number 1 for strike rate in that stat last year. Remember, they would just they'd win the ball and they'd just go.
Yep.
Tex Walker out the back would just kick it from 55, or Darcy Fogarty would just take a mark 30 out and slot it because he always does. They're starting to get that game back on track now. Isaac Rankin's lifted his player rating 34% in the last 5 weeks. Jordan Dawson is up 59%. Remember, he had a horrific start to the year in terms of ball use. He was going about 40% by foot. Tex Walker is up 105%. Jake Saligo stepped into the midfield, up 43%. Josh Worrell up 71%. So all of these players and all of this structure tweaked a couple little things. They are back on track at the moment. They've lost only to Melbourne in the last couple of weeks. They beaten Carlton, beat Port Adelaide, who I still think are a good team.
Bombers controversially
lost to them, and of course they're in the 8 as well. So there's a lot to be said for how the Crows have turned around the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I think there is a platform to say that don't rule them out of making finals just yet.
I think Matty Nix summed it up beautifully early in the season, and the players as well, but they had a number of their key playmakers that were out of form. And that's, you touched on Dawson, but Crouch, Laird, Brodie Smith as well.
Yes. Yep.
He's somebody who has always been a key ball carrier for the Crows, and he started the season very, very poorly. But they've all started to come good. It's starting to click for the Crows, and You mentioned Saligo. The move of him to the midfield has been incredible. We see Rankin go through there and Rochelle as well at different times throughout the game. But across all four lines, they're exciting. And the Crows' backs as well, Mark Keane, the game that he put together in the showdown, Hinge, Worrell, you've mentioned.
I like Josh Worrell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more consistency that they can get playing with each other, the better they're going to get. And we know for Tex too, slower start, but you can't hold that against him. He's lost his father-in-law. There's been so many things going on for him, unfortunately, off the football field, that it probably is going to take him, a little while to settle into things and get back to the Tex Walker that we know and love. And he's certainly started to do that over the last couple.
And a good reminder as well that, and maybe the Bulldogs are experiencing a little bit of this at the moment, the season is a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
How quick was everyone to write Adelaide off after the first month and say that they're no good, Matthew Nicks has to go, Tex is finished, all that sort of stuff. You can start slow. It's okay to start slow and finish strong. Ask Carlton last year. They at mid-table, middle of the year, and then finished like one of the best teams in the comp.
So I start at 0-3, and do you think Craig McRae's worried? I don't think so.
Not one little bit.
No.
We are about to start to hit the wetter months of the season, Heath, which means that those who use the footy well are at even more of a premium coming up. Who's using it well this year?
Yeah, top 5 field kicks in the competition. So going through the AFL player ratings, they can break it down by ball use, ball winning, every little single stat in terms of how much impact they have on a game. The top 5 kicks in the competition at the moment. Ottawa mentions to Bailey Dale, who's coming with a bullet. Liam Duggan's around. Dane Zorko had 1 million kicks on the weekend, so he's there. Number 5, Graham Myers. I don't think that's a surprise.
Graham Myers.
59% by foot, which is below the AFL average, but all of them are in the forward half, so he rates really highly. Nick Dacos, 4th. Isaac Heaney is 3rd. That's a surprise.
Your boy.
Yeah, we love him.
Yeah, we love Isaac Heaney. But considering how much contested ball he wins, the fact he's going at 67% by foot is incredible. Nick Blakey is 2nd at 80% by foot. Number 1, Nazaya Wanganeen Millera. Going by player ratings, purely looking at the end of round 8, it is the highest return since player ratings were introduced back in 2010, overtaking Paul Chapman back in 2010, the first year. His player rating is the highest in the first 8 weeks for ball use in the competition. He's going at 79% by foot. Of his 41 rebound 50s, 20 of them have led to uncontested possessions, which ranks number 1.
Wow.
Normally AFL teams go at 30%. He's going at 50%, and 7 of those have led to scores, which ranks 4th in the competition. So he's having a brilliant season.
You can see why when you watch St Kilda live, Abs, we don't use the word quarterback because people hate that sort of Americanized word, but every opportunity when they're coming out of defence, they do whatever they can, St Kilda, to get it into his hands.
Absolutely.
And you can understand why.
You can understand why, 100%. I guess the value on quality field kicks and the best ball users is unbelievable, and he is certainly one for the Saints.
Heath, nicely done. See you in Launceston on Saturday.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And
Fantastic trip for the
Nazaya
boys.
Wanganeen Miller will be there, and he'll be trying to carve up Hawthorn as well, 2 teams we talked about. So that'll be a really interesting matchup.
Bring those numbers with you, I reckon, as well. Hey, who's winning tomorrow night, Abs? Carlton and Melbourne?
Blues for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think that
Me
they just
too.
want to bounce back after last week, and those forwards, I reckon they're going to be up and about too.
You are going to hear about it all tomorrow on Footy Talk. Daisy and Heater will be in the house. They'll have a deep dive of that game, of also Geelong taking on the Power on Friday night. And Will Day, great to see him back playing some good footy for the Hawks. He will be with the boys in the studio as well. Abs, you have a good day.
You too.
We'll catch you next time on Footy Talk.